So after that presentation that night on Thursday the 18th, the next day, I didn't get a call, but I had 4 friends with me, and one of them was a man who knew the board president, the board president, excuse me. And so he gave him a call the next day and said, I'm happy to inform you that there will no longer be allowed any outside flyers or notices, of events be allowed in the schools. And so we thought we'd won a little victory, And also we had an attorney from Liberty Counsel who wrote a letter to the board citing cases, in the legal language, and in other words, it was just kind of a cease and desist sort of letter too. So I don't know if he got that first and they made the decision or what, but we felt like we won a little victory. But what happened is the event happened on Thursday night, the 25th, just a couple of days ago. And it was reported to me yesterday that the event was very well attended. I said, you mean by like students and their parents? Oh, no, by teachers. So apparently, and I can't confirm this yet, but I will be about trying to do it, that a lot of teachers that got these notices or these invitations, apparently they went. And also, here is an even worse part of this, that at the end of this event, the dinner and the discussion and so forth, they did a Muslim call to prayer with the teachers. Muslim call to prayer was done with the teachers at the end of this event. So, you tell me that's not indoctrination? What if it had been a Christian event and the pastor got up there and said, now we want everybody to bow their heads and pray the prayer of acceptance or faith, But this is what they're doing. And I'm telling you, it's here and it's growing. And it's been subtle, but we're fighting it. So anyway, I have a couple of other charts. How am I doing on time, Philip?
Go ahead.
Okay. Reach back there and get them.
I do want to add, the invitations weren't limited to the teachers. I have a couple of Kanawha County students myself, and I follow them on Facebook.
Oh, really?
A copy of that was sent out on Facebook for every subscriber to see. That's how
Really?
I actually saw it earlier in the week. So any parents or students, teachers, whoever follows them received a copy of that.
Would you send me that?
It's gone. As you were talking about it, I was looking for it.
Okay.
I went to their Facebook page. It's gone. There's no trace of it whatsoever.
Just like that.
But that's where I had originally saw it, was on Facebook. But it's
Wow. See, we didn't even know that.
What school are you affiliated with?
Elkview and Hoover.
Which one, I'm sorry?
Elkview Middle School.
Elkview?
Hoover.
Okay, so you even, but you didn't get the invitations personally at the
No,
school?
not a physical. It was just shared on their Facebook page.
Okay, prior to the event?
Yes, a few
Okay.
days prior, beginning of the week.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you told me that.
I mean, it was not school specific. It was just the whole county.
Well, I told the school board, I said, you know what? If these invitations had been mailed to the teachers' homes, I wouldn't be here tonight. What can I say about that? But they were passed out on school property and school time with the approval of the superintendent of Kanawha County Schools. So to me, that seems like an egregious violation of church and state.
You have children in the schoolhouse, in the school?
Yes, I have 2 in the public schools, and they have about 8,500 people following them. So that's about how many people saw it.
Wow.
If they check the notifications.
Do you have any way of, I guess I was going to say, talking to a friend and see if they made a copy of that or anything? No. Okay.
Unlikely.
Well, if you ever see anything like that again, I'd be very interested, in getting it so I can document it, because we do want to follow things like that.
Did you go to the event?
No.
Some friends of yours?
I'm not aware of anyone personally who went, but I'm not really in
I'm a
that
school teacher, so it would have.
I'm going to back up here for a minute and give you, go over the West Virginia State Refugee Plan with you. Okay, did you pick up one of these? Okay. I mentioned again, just one of those.
It's not on the best.
What I'm passing out to you is a copy of a FOIA I made, Freedom of Information Act request, to get the West Virginia State Refugee Plan for 2016 and 2017. And just after 4 months and a half, or 4 or 5 months, just received the 2018 plan. which started October of last year. Now, they sent it to me a couple of weeks ago, and they sent me an incomplete document. It wasn't signed by Governor of Justice. It wasn't dated. And I said, well, I couldn't use this in a court of law. There's no signature. There's no date. And so I told him I want the signed document, and I eventually got it. But let me just walk you through this a little bit. Where I have the tab at the top, that's just separating the years, the 2016 plan from the 2017 plan. But you'll notice they always put a cover letter when they respond back to your FOIA. The next page is, and here's one of the first things I noticed. This letter that Governor Tomlin signed to Bob Carey, who was the Director of Office of Refugee Resettlement Office, or Bureau for Children and Families, submitting our 2017 refugee plan. You'll notice that letter is dated August 15th. Flip back and look at the cover letter to me. It's dated August the 9th. So I got this that many days, 7 days before it was actually signed by the governor, or before they dated this letter, whichever, which said to me right away, this is an official state document. Why is this being post-dated like this? You know?
Yeah.
So that raised my eyebrows, or my questioning right at the outset. And it just kind of said to me too, is this, representative of what I've always heard now these many months, that how fast and loose they play with things, in documentation and recording and stuff. The next page is signed by the cabinet secretary at the time. But the fourth page, which actually says at the bottom, page 2 of the document here, but it's the fourth page back, it says at the top, West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources, fiscal year 2017. And if you go down into the second paragraph, you'll see the name there, Jessica Dale. That's the woman I told you that was the state refugee coordinator here. And again, in the 2018 plan, it's still less Jessica Dale. So this is where I knew, or how I knew who was the state refugee coordinator. And then down in paragraph 3, you'll see that it talks about the 55 counties having 4 regional directors or administrators. So that's how I knew there were more people involved. And it goes from there. So you can peruse that if you want. It's now outdated because the 2018 one is finally in my hands, but I haven't had time to go through it yet. It's going to be probably the very same thing because they rubber stamp these things, just maybe a different cabinet secretary or a different governor signs it. But where I want you to go is to that side tab. And the tab on the side here will take you to a report at the back. And I'll give you a minute to get there. Okay, everybody there? Now, you heard me mention the R&P abstract. This is an R&P abstract. It says at the top, Reception and Placement, or R&P abstract for 2017. So this was done by Catholic Charities of West Virginia, the only resettlement contractor in the state, who's been bringing refugees in here for 37 plus years. You'll notice that there's an abbreviation up there at the top, USCCB. That stands for United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Remember, there are 9 contractors, and USCCB is one. So that's who Catholic Charities of West Virginia is operating under. Now, go down there, and I've highlighted a few things just for your attention. You'll see U.S. tide capacity highlighted. And what that means is that West Virginia, supposedly, is not supposed to bring refugees in here who don't already have an existing tie to the state of West Virginia. They had, a year ago or more, they wanted to get rid of this tie so they could bring in just any and everybody, without a tie here. But to my knowledge, and especially with the Trump slowdown, I don't think that's happened. So Catholic Charities is telling the State Department they want to bring in 50 refugees here. They can't bring in any, supposedly, with no ties, so that's 0 and a total of 50. Again, keep in mind the Episcopal group wanted to bring in 135. That on their report, it would have looked something like this, with the numbers different. Then go down a little bit, where on the right-hand side, it has mostly non-compliant. And I thought, well, what does that mean? You know, mostly non-compliant. It's back here on. And I asked the director, Catholic Charities Refugee Program, I said, what does that mean? You know, your oversight of the refugees, you're not in compliance with some regulation. And the way it was explained to me, and the best way I know how to tell you is, it was like a paperwork problem that they had to fix. So, was that the case? I don't know. But, you know, it speaks something else when you look at it. So, but not knowing otherwise, I have to take at face value for the moment what she said. Then down below, you'll see for fiscal year 2017, which ran from October 1 of 2016 to September 30th of 2017, these were the nationalities they wanted to bring in. So you can see the various ones there. And if you flip to the second page of that R&P abstract, now when they send this information to the State Department, there's certain things they have to include, like, you know, what's the unemployment rate in the area where they want to bring them? What potential jobs or employers are there available to them? So they have to put that in there. And I of course, at the time, West Virginia's unemployment rate was 6.5%, higher than the national average. You know, and I said to the legislature, I said, and in that initial report in that packet I gave you, you know, West Virginia's unemployment rate is higher than the national average, and you're talking, you know, the government's talking about bringing in refugees here. And by the way, if there are jobs available at the United States Post Office, why aren't our people getting those jobs instead of foreign nationals that are being, you know, brought in here without our okay about it? And then the average wage you'll see there is $9 to $12 an hour. You heard me say that before. And you have to, thinking through this, if a family of four, and let's say the husband, maybe even if the wife works, they're only making $9 to $12, you know, that's not adequate. They need subsidy of some sort. So,
Do you know what that quad graphics is?
it's like a big printing outfit, I think.
In
Yes.
Charleston?
No, they're in, they're in Martinsburg, I believe. Yes, I think they're in Martinsburg.
Why would they say they were going to bring so many people to Charleston? What jobs would they have here?
Well, here's the thing with that. According to the way that the refugee program has operated, they would name like Charleston, the capital, as a kind of a hub. And from that hub, they could place refugees within a 100-mile radius of that hub. Now, what Catholic Charities did, and which may save them, it's called remote placement, as I understand it. And what that remote placement is, Catholic Charities has 7 locations throughout the state. So any town in West Virginia, basically, as I understand it now, as it was explained to me, is within that 100-mile placement zone. So they could place them anywhere in West Virginia. In some of the other states, that may not be the case because, you know, they might be larger states geographically and so forth. But, you know, that's it. So they could, Charleston would just be a hub. But, you know, on that refugee report, you'll see they've gone to Washington, West Virginia, a town of about 1,200 people, you know. And there were 10 Iraqis placed there in like a 6-month period of time. You know, so I'll tell you, it's all part of changing the demographics of our nation, you know, is behind this. They want forced demographic changes. They want to flood our country with impoverished third world peoples who are going to consistently, you know, require all the subsidies and crush our social service systems. And with that, you know, our way of life and everything else. So then I've highlighted that paragraph there. And when I saw this for the first time, it was one of the most, well, how many egregious things can you talk about, you know? But this paragraph says that if a family wants to bring in, a refugee wants to bring in a family member from, you know, overseas, and even if they're mentally ill, we have to take them. And we get to pay for their mental health services. You know, there were over 1,500 cases of TB that came in through the refugees in places across this country. A high school in Kansas, I think they had 25 cases about a year and a half ago or a couple of years ago. So to treat someone with TB, the usual cost is about $150,000. So, it used to be that they would screen people, and supposedly they still screen the refugees for health conditions, but because they screened them, at least under Obama, didn't mean they kept them out. They just documented, the health condition, but they brought them in and we got to pay for the treatment. And I was told also that since 2010, till the time Obama went out of office, the refugees weren't being screened for HIV. So that was another problem, could be another problem that's out there looming, who knows, because that can lie dormant for years. So you start to really see all the complications and problems with this. And then the 2016 plan is there, but they redacted a lot of things, and there's really not much need to point much out to you there, except for that same statement is in there about a family member being mentally ill, but this one even says severely mentally ill. So does that mean they have PTSD from the wars there, or who knows? Maybe the women, because they're subjected to beatings and to female genital mutilation and all these things, maybe they have all kinds of mental or psychological problems from that. But the point is, why do we have to pay for that? Why is our government importing problems for us? Well, we know why, in essence, the big picture. So, but that's what a refugee plan looks like. So, but these are like golden to get a hold of, and that's one of the first things that when you get into this, you start to learn about. Any other questions? Oh, there is another document here I want to go through with you. This is.
Oh, can I ask you about that
Sure.
last one that he just did, the governor's plan that he signed off
Yeah.
on? Didn't you find out that the legislature was not even aware of such a plan?
No, they weren't. That's a good point, Brenda. When I got a hold of this, and as I started to talk to legislators about it, no one had ever seen it or knew about it. No elected official I ever spoke to knew about it. So you wonder, how does this stuff get by them, Well, as I was told by the general counsel for the Bureau for Medical Services, if we're not required to keep a report, we don't. And if Medicaid or whatever the government program is has guidelines about what they're supposed to do, but they don't necessarily bother telling our legislators about it, the people's elected representatives. This is another FOIA. You're going to get tired of hearing that term probably, that I did. And they responded to this back last August. And again, trying to nail down some of this information about the refugees and the breakdown of the population and all. So I went back to 2012. I didn't go back beyond that because I thought, well, if we can at least catch a snapshot of what's happened these 5 or 6 years, that'll be pretty good documentation for what we need. So I indicated in my FOIA to them, and they respond back. They always respond back with what you ask and put it there, and then they address it. So you'll see 19 refugees were admitted to the state of West Virginia 2012, and then 25, 28, and so forth. So remember I said earlier that West Virginia has never approached 100 refugees. That was going to change if Hillary had gotten elected and if they were able to fully implement their plans. Who knows how many hundreds we would have been getting. But keep that number in mind, that 19 and that 25. And then turn 2 pages. And you'll see a little chart here. It's orange by itself. Yeah, you got it there. And this is what they responded to me regarding the Medicaid for refugees. And you'll see it says refugees receiving Medicaid, and it goes back for the years I've asked. And I didn't know what unique cases and all that meant, so I called the supervisor and I said, what is that? It's just their terminology, like for individuals, like in total unique cases, of course, that's like a family of 2 or 3 or whatever it would be, but unique recipients those are individuals that received it. So you'll see for 2012, it says there that 80 individuals received Medicaid. Well, we only brought 19 in. And you'll see in 2013, we brought in 25 refugees, but 104 received Medicaid. So, you look at that and go, none of these numbers match up. So I called her back again. I said, please explain this to me. I said, I'm seeing different numbers, nothing matches up. I said, is it safe to assume that this is a cumulative effect? In other words, there were refugees on prior years that are just carrying forward and still on Medicaid. And she said, I think that would be safe to assume. That was her comment to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a couple of comments about that. Someone said to me, in fact, Tom Roten on his radio program week before, he said, well, maybe it's because, you know, there's some fudging going on here or something, you know, or some people are claiming. I said, that could be. Because we don't have, you know, anything other than what they tell us to go on. Also, I have to say this. I spoke to the Cabell County Republican Executive Committee back in, I think it was July of last year. And I didn't have these reports, but I was going over the refugee numbers and how many had been placed in West Virginia and so forth. And a woman came up to me afterwards. She said, I don't think your numbers are right. And I said, well, why do you say that? I got my numbers from the official website for the State Department, you know, that provides that. She said, well, she said, because I work in the welfare office here, and we're all the time signing up refugees. I said, really? I said, that's interesting. And see what happens in some cases. And again, I have to stress, this is why we need a bill that will hold these agencies accountable, make them report, and hold somebody's feet to the fire on it. What happens in some cases is something called secondary migration. A refugee will be placed in a town, you know, somewhere, Texas, New York, wherever it is, and once their benefits are exhausted, they'll move somewhere else. Okay? So they'll secondarily migrate to another area. Maybe they've got another family member, you know, or a connection somehow in that new area. But she said, we're signing up people from, I believe she told me Ohio, Maryland, and Virginia. She said frequently. So that's interesting. So are these numbers here representative of some of that? I don't know. No, I don't know. So you'll notice they gave me numbers of people, but they did not give me dollar cost, which I asked for. However, turn to the next report, and you'll see this is SNAP, or the acronym for what's the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. We used to call it food stamps, you know, but now it's politically incorrect to embarrass people by, you know, having them pull food stamps out of a coupon book, so you give them a debit card and refill it every month, you know. So the SNAP program, you'll see there for 2012. Now remember, we brought in 19 refugees. 187 are on SNAP. You see what I mean about none of the numbers matching up? And I pointed this out to some legislators the last couple of days. And I said, I want you to see this documentation so you can go to the Speaker of the House and say, Mr. Speaker, this is why we need a bill. Because we're not sure if he's going to support it. He seems very tepid on it. And to me, this just bolsters the reason or the need to have a bill. And then now with this SNAP report, we did get the dollar amount. So over those 5 years, 5 or 6 years, you'll notice it's over $1 million for the numbers that they've indicated there. So.
What's interesting that everything dropped after 2014. The 2015 numbers are all lower.
Yeah.
Then they start creeping back up.
Yeah. And again, what's the reason for that? Because Obama was still in office. The refugee program was really just ramping up, you know. So it's hard to try to analyze that one, Brenda, but it's a good question. And then the last report there, you'll see these are the TANF, or the cash welfare payments. So there were 32 people on cash welfare. 19 refugees were brought to the state, and at a cost of over $34,000. So those categories that I mentioned on that poster board and I showed you from the outset, we've got 3 of them here in part, you know, just in part. But it needs fine-tuning, it needs reporting, it needs accountability, and reporting to our elected officials. This next page, I extracted from the Refugee Act of 1980, the actual bill itself. I extracted these 2 pages, and I bracketed this in red. to point out to you. At the outset, you might remember I said that for each refugee brought here, that the federal government was supposed to reimburse the state, whichever state, for the first 36 months for the cost of cash welfare and Medicaid. You'll see here, this is written into the law. That's what that bracketed paragraph is. Again, I have provided this to legislators to tell them. And again, this is why the state of Tennessee is suing the federal government. Because in 1991, that stopped. And who knows, the untold millions of California and New York are due, and other large states. I mean, you could just see from our numbers with the few numbers that we brought in. I'd say I need to correct myself that they brought in instead of we brought in. But you'll see that they start to add up significantly. And then that last email trail there, or thread, this is the last response I got from the General Counsel for the Bureau for Medical Services, where he tells me we are not required by the FOIA law to prepare a report for you that's a report that we don't already do. In other words, we're not required to go into our system and collect all this data for you and put it in a report that doesn't already exist. And then he also tells me that based upon the Medicaid, that they can't reveal to me about the minors, the unaccompanied children, and their Medicaid cost. So these are the stone walls you hit, when trying to get information. But these were the first real numbers that we got, and I'm hoping that they'll be vital enough that they'll add weight to what we're asking the legislature to do.
If you just pass a document, then everything would be available on FOIA.
Yes,
right?
Yes. In fact, what I would like to see, Jeffrey, is for them, and we thought about trying to get a bill through the legislature on this, but there's so many things we're dealing with the this particular issue, the refugees. We're also looking at a bill on female genital mutilation, which West Virginia passed a bill in 1999. It's S82 under a Democrat legislature. It's a female genital mutilation bill. This was before 9/11. I mean, I was astounded when I found this out. And now many states are passing FGM bills. So we're looking at the possibility of trying to amend that, because it has a clause in there for an exception for medical necessity. Well, two major leftist organizations, the World Health Organization and the CDC, have both said, first of all, there are 500,000 women in this country that are at risk for female genital mutilation. And secondly, they have said there's absolutely no medical necessity for this procedure. So we would like to see West Virginia's FGM bill amended, but given everything else we're working on, I don't know if we can get that done this session. And I would have to get a delegate or somebody to take it up. And I'm already doing so many things, I just don't know if there's time, given the 60-day legislature. So also besides the FGM, we're looking at a bill, American Laws for American Courts. Because throughout the country, we've talked about how Sharia law is creeping into our judicial system. And a lot of states, I think about, at this point, 13 or 14 states, have passed ALAC bills, American Laws for American Courts, which says, you may not use foreign law, to settle agreements or disputes and so forth, because we don't want Sharia law used as a model for our law here. It's the Constitution that should be used. And then the other bill is a sanctuary state, no sanctuary state. We want to see if we can put that together. So there's a lot on the table, in other words. Did I answer your question?
No sanctuary state would almost have to be state by state, wouldn't it?
Yes, exactly. Right now, I think Virginia is the only state that has a no sanctuary state bill up. And what we often do is Act for America, the national headquarters, they follow all these legislative issues. I've been in contact with them a lot in the last few weeks. And if you're working on a bill in your state that involves any of these issues, they want to know about it, they want to track it, they want to support it. And so, you know, they look at all the different states to try to see what's going on. And from there, they will create model legislation, which then the legislators rather in any given state can use. You know, if you give that to them or you take that as a model and put your own language in it, you know, adapt the language. So that's what's going on in Virginia, to my knowledge, is the only one that's done that so far. And their bill is about that big. It's like one paragraph, you know. So I read it, but then I haven't had time to go back to it recently. But there is a delegate that's anxious to sponsor a no sanctuary state bill in the legislature. So hopefully, you know, maybe we can get that done. You know? So some of these things, as you know, you have to pick your battles, you know, at any given time. I have a few more pieces of information for you here I'll have on the table. One of those things is some points I put together, 24 points about the refugee racket. So some of these are, you know, well, these are in addition to the information packet that I handed out at the beginning. But this is good information in here. It really covers the refugee industry, aka the racket, and why Congress needs to repeal it. That's what I said earlier, we're ultimately after. The only way to get rid of this is have them repeal it and go back to a sane way of bringing people into this country. Also, I have lists up here that would be helpful for you. You know, all this DACA thing is going on now. We need to stop DACA because it's a violation of our sovereignty. And ultimately, they're projecting as many as 10 million people could potentially come in if this DACA thing goes through. So, and we know how the government works, that they do their part first in terms of getting the bill passed and getting their interests taken care of, but the wall never gets built or the taxes, you know, never get reduced. So we've got to stop this DACA amnesty. These are the phone numbers for our 5 U.S. representatives, the 2 senators and the 3 congressmen. So this make it easy for you. I have the list already made. And also, this is something I put together. You've heard me say several times that the proponents of refugee resettlement will say this or that or the other. And Ann Corker posted this in her blog that I did a while back. And it says, you know, when they say, you can say, and it addresses those issues. They'll say things like, well, your town is losing population. Bringing refugees in will revitalize your economy. You know, I say, really, bringing in third world impoverished people into an impoverished state is going to revitalize the economy? I mean, when you break these things down and look at them, you know, realistically, they just don't make sense. So here are some good responses that you can use. And then there's some other reports. There's a page up here for references for websites and books that you may want to pick up. I brought a few books here so you could peruse them if you like to and see what they're about. Leo Holman's book, Stealth Invasion, talks about, you know, the underhandedness of this and how they're doing so much of this. We've talked about that for a while through incremental changes that they're making through every level of our government and society. And then this one last piece up here. You heard me mention about the center, the mosque in Morgantown. This is a report that I put together for the people in Morgantown, but it applies to the whole state, really. And this was that group, that second group I told you that wanted to get approved to bring refugees in. They had a meeting back in December 4th of 2015. Now, keep in mind, I had tried for months to get in to see Senator Capito, Senator Manchin, Congressman Mooney, you know, and all our U.S. representatives. I didn't try to see McKinley, or I did see Jenkins, but anyway, having said that, they wouldn't meet with me. Capito had a hard time. Manchin, it took me 9 months to get an appointment with him. When I was working on this, I found out that they were there at a meeting for this refugee group to try to, you know, get themselves approved. On December 4th of 2015, it said Manchin and Capito were there personally. Wow. And Mooney and Congressman Jenkins, I think, and Mayor Charleston sent representatives. And meanwhile, they won't see me. You know, somebody trying to put the other side out. Here's the information. I told you about the OIC, the Islamic Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and how they're tied into ISNA. And these are all the interfaith groups that are their partners. And you'll see Episcopal Migration Ministries. And back on a few pages back, you'll see the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. But I have to tell you, there's the USCCB. Practically every major denomination is tied into ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, which is one of the 29 front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood. So this just gets deeper and deeper all the time when you think about these mainline denominations being faith partners with a terrorist organization. I mean, it really is mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing, yeah.
This page from ISNA's website, they deny having any ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. But I wrote a note here, they practice taqiyya, they practice deception. Actually, a Muslim can put his hand on the Quran and swear and lie to you, and it's perfectly acceptable so long as it advances the cause of Islam. Can you imagine a Christian putting his hand on the Bible and swearing before Almighty God and telling you a lie at the same time? I don't think there are too many that would do that. And furthermore, Christianity wouldn't endorse it, nor would Judaism endorse it, But yet Islam endorses it under the practice of taqiyya. And there's just some more information about the Islamic Society of North America and the Muslim Student Association. And then back here in the back, I put, that's a page from the Constitution, the Mosque Constitution in Morgantown, where it shows the connection to NATE, North American Islamic Trust, and the Islamic Society of North America. And then you saw this chart earlier. This is that FBI connect the dots thing. So people in Morgantown, the group that I met with, they're very much familiar with this and they're aware of it. And that's part of what you have to do. You have to inform and educate people about the dangers that are out there. Let me just show you one other poster, and I'm done. Philip's going to throw me out of here. We talked about Catholic Charities being the contractor for the refugees in West Virginia. I wanted to find out how much they were getting in government grants. The only government grant that I could find that they were getting for refugees, in addition to the money they get, for bringing every refugee in, is a $75,000 annual grant that they've gotten for years. I have a copy of some of those grant applications. But in the meanwhile, when I FOIA'd the West Virginia Department of Education, here's what I got. Now, these are grants that Catholic Charities of West Virginia has received in the millions and millions of dollars. I think it's over $13 million, as I recall. And these grants all have codes on them to tell you. The code tells you what it's for. Well, we had to find out what's the code mean. So I had a friend of mine do this legend, and these are private. Now, these are not refugee grants, okay? So it's not for the refugees. But what it's for is the summer food program, child care administration, adult basic education, and basically the school lunch program, the school food program. My question is, why is church and state so wrapped up here together? Number one, why is Catholic Charities getting millions and millions of dollars? They are getting the moral credit again for people thinking, oh, aren't they wonderful? Look what they're
You
doing.
think it's the church people giving the money?
Oh, it's not. It's not. It's primarily this. This is where it's coming from. And I find this so egregious. And I wouldn't care if it was the Lutherans or the Episcopalians or I wouldn't care who it was. They should not be getting this money because the churches are selling their soul to the government for tax dollars. Now, having said that, I think I told you maybe in private conversation that I met with someone yesterday who told me that, and he confirmed this, he said that in his parish that they don't even make hardly any requests for offerings anymore. And I said, well, why is that? He said that the priest told him that we've got government money now. So they're hardly, according to him and his parish, they were hardly taking up offerings. So why would they need to when they're getting millions of our dollars to do the Lord's work, so to speak, right? That people think is coming from the monies they raise. And here's something in addition to that, and I think with this, and one other thing I'll close. On the back here, I had heard through some people in Charleston that the Co-Basilica downtown It's a special status that a Catholic church gets, and there are very few of them across the country, I guess, or around the world. And I don't quite understand what it all means, but it's more than a parish, it's elevated. So I had heard that they had put in new flooring, and that they'd put in marble flooring in their sanctuary. So called the building commission to find out, and said, was there flooring placed, and what? It was $310,000. This man at the building commission told us that. I plan on going to the building commission and getting a copy of the records. I don't know that the flooring was marble, but I do know $310,000 was spent on new flooring in the co-basilica on Virginia Street in downtown Charleston in September of 2017 for new flooring. Which people might look at that and say, why is that any of your business? It's my business because of this.
Right.
If they didn't have our money, our tax dollars, to do their Lord's work, or the Lord's work in their estimation, then maybe they would have to use, they wouldn't have the money for this kind of thing. So meanwhile, it's giving these church organizations money to buy properties, expand, their organizations, and at taxpayer expense. So, my tax dollars are not your charity. And I want to make it clear, I think each of us has an obligation for charity, but it's a personal obligation.
Right.
It's not the job of the government, and the Constitution doesn't say that, right? It's not the job of the government to be giving our tax dollars to groups like this. I thought we had caseworkers and social workers who oversaw these things, and we do have caseworkers. Why aren't they overseeing these programs instead of Catholic Charities? See? And they get money and they get power because of the money. So, one last thing, the proponents will tell you, no refugees have committed crimes, serious crimes. Oh, don't tell me that. I could probably do 5 posters like this. Documented crimes, and these are serious crimes by refugees. You'll remember probably the Sarnaya brothers, the Boston bombers. They came here as asylees, their father did. And the only difference between an asylee and a refugee is brought here by our government. An asylee gets here on their own through maybe a tourist visa, or they come across the border illegally, some way they get here on their own. Then they ask for asylum, and they get refugee status with all the benefits that we've talked about, with Medicaid and SNAP and TANF and all of them. So I used different news sources on this because I didn't want people saying, well, you only use conservative sources. I mean, you'll see there's ABC and there's NBC and CNN, and there are a bunch. And in one of these articles, the Muslim man raped a young little girl so badly that the coroner said he almost couldn't say it publicly what was done to her. So you see, under Islam, women are second-class citizens. A Muslim man has a right to rape a non-Muslim woman, especially if she's not covered. So that's why you see some of these, people trying to get women to wear hijabs and stuff. You need to cover yourself. But again, it's indoctrination. So anyway, with that, thank you. I appreciate all the time you guys have given me and an opportunity to meet with your group.
Important information, and thanks for not pulling any punches.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brenda.